Donald Trump is furious with GOP Senator Mike Rounds from South Dakota after he refuted the former president's unfounded claims that the 2020 presidential election was stolen from him. Now, before we get to Trump's response to Mike Rounds, here's what Rounds had to say during an interview with ABC.
You voted to certify the election last year. You condemned the protest as an insurrection. What do you say to all those Republicans, all those veterans who believe the election was stolen, who've bought the falsehoods coming from former President Trump?
We looked, as a part of our due diligence, we looked at over 60 different accusations made in multiple states. While there were some irregularities, there were none of the irregularities which would have risen to the point where they would have changed the vote outcome in a single state. The election was fair as we've seen. We simply did not win the election as Republicans for the presidency.
Now, as you can all imagine, Trump don't like that. He was very, very upset, especially considering the fact that Senator Mike Rounds was one of the Republicans he endorsed. And so in a statement, a very bitter and salty statement, Trump wrote, "Senator," in quotes, as if he's not really a senator, "Mike Rounds of the great state of South Dakota just went woke on the fraudulent presidential election of 2020. He made a statement this weekend on ABC Fake News that despite massive evidence to the contrary, he found the election to be okay, just fine. Is he crazy or just stupid? The only reason he did this is because he got my endorsement and easily won his state in 2020. So now he thinks he has time. And those are the only ones, the weak, who will break away. Even though the election will not be coming up for 5 years, I will never endorse this jerk again." Well, you tell him, Trump, you tell him good. He also writes that the radical left Democrats and rhinos, Republicans in name only, like Senator Mike Rounds, do not make it easy for our country to succeed. He is a weak and ineffective leader, and I hereby firmly pledge that he will never receive my endorsement again. So does he got bamboozled. He got swindled by Mike Rounds, I guess. Is he gonna take any responsibility for endorsing someone who turned on him? Probably not.
All right, there's two parts of this story. One is the Republicans are beginning to turn, a faction of the Republicans. We've been telling you that, you're beginning to see it now, and I have a theory on why that is. We'll get to that in a second. But the first part of it is, told you. Before the 2016 election, I did 100 loser Donald segments because I know that nothing gets under Trump's skin more than the fact that he is a loser. And if you do that, you could agitate him into making mistake after mistake after mistake, and you could reframe him from successful businessman who knows what he's doing to pathetic crying loser. Now, the Democrats thought that was too uncivil. So Hillary Clinton treated him with great civility and got her ass handed to her. Okay, so, and look at what happens here. He lost the election and he's been crying about it ever since. And all you have to do is to provoke him is just to say, it's not true, you actually lost. And he goes, "Oh my God, I pledge to you, I will never ever do this. I can't believe I lost." What a pathetic, sniveling mess. And by the way, if you're a right winger and you're like, "Oh God, I'm so mad at Cenk," I think crying is strength. Okay, have at it, Hoss. Keep supporting the whiny little baby in Florida. My dad doesn't like you. Okay, hey, Donald Trump and all the losers present one piece of evidence in court, just one. You have nothing. Oh yeah, black people intimidated the judges. You losers. Yes, all right. So now, number two though, why are they doing it? As we're gonna show you another example here in a second. Guys, I think it's the donor class realizing, yeah, fascism is a little destabilizing for the markets. Send out the Mike Rounds and our media guys to say, yeah, maybe we should move on from this.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of truth to that theory. And to be sure, it seems like everything's a little orchestrated, right? So we just gave you the example of Mike Rounds. Remember earlier there was Chris Christie who was making his rounds, criticizing Trump, and more importantly, throwing cold water on the notion that the election was stolen from him. And now we hear from Fox News's Brian Kilmeade, who's been an ardent supporter of Trump's. In a recent interview, he also pushed back on the notion that the election was stolen. Let's watch.
At the heart of the outraged media coverage of January 6th is Donald Trump's insistence, I sometimes get several statements a day from him, that he did not lose the election. Now, you have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I do. I think that in life, you have to learn to lose. Hillary Clinton has to learn that. You know, Al Gore pretty much did learn that. Stacey Abrams didn't learn that. And if you did, in fact, get screwed out of this election, put together an A-team list of lawyers, not the ones we witnessed, and show us the districts and show us how. I have not seen any of that. And people were very receptive. You would have been very receptive if they showed proof of this. Now, it defies logic to think the president could win by 7 million votes, who never left his basement, who couldn't put together a clear speech, who never engaged in a challenging interview, who really struggled through every debate, could actually win this election. But in the end, I think you got to channel back to Andrew Jackson, the guy the president also was compared to quite often, an outsider that defied logic, didn't want to be an insider to Washington, hired his family. When he lost a controversial election, despite winning the popular vote, and it went to the House, a backroom deal was cut with Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams. And guess what? He becomes Secretary of State, does Clay. Adams gets the presidency, and he lost by millions of votes to Andrew Jackson. Jackson shows up at the inaugural and goes and wins the next two elections and becomes more powerful after being president than being president.
Okay.
In life, we have to learn to lose, Democrats and Republicans.
Now, Kilmeade made similar statements last week on Friday during an episode of Fox and Friends. So this is not the first time Kilmeade has pushed back on Trump's lies about the 2020 election. But I do want to just make a quick comment, Cenk, about how he phrased his argument there. I love that he's using this like Toastmasters sandwich method of like, breaking the news to Trump, but doing so in a way that also like harshly criticizes Democrats so his feelings aren't too hurt. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, so Stacey Abrams, we hate her, right? And Hillary Clinton didn't accept the result, even though she did accept the results of the 2016 presidential election. So he gives all these examples of Democrats, which of course are nowhere near the level of Trump in terms of being delusional about the reality of our elections. And in the middle of that, gobbledygook explanation tries to push back against the notion that Trump had the election stolen from him in 2020.
Yeah, look, one or two random things doesn't mean anything, but when you see 3, 4, 5 of them, that means it's a pattern. So going forward, you will see many more Republicans and media in the right wing coming out and saying they did lose the election, let's move forward. It's business interests that are pushing them to do that. So that's our theory, and if we're right, you'll see us being proven right over and over again. But I want to say one last thing about Hillary Clinton. So did she whine about losing? Yes. Did she make excuses for losing? Definitely. Whether it was the Russians stole it, no, Russians have other connections with Donald Trump, and you're overhyping that. Or it was progressive voters betrayed me, younger voters, it's their fault. I mean, she has 1,000 excuses. But that is different than saying, no, I actually won.
Right.
She doesn't say that. So if you hear right wingers saying that, that's a lie. She never said, no, I technically won. She didn't go to court 60 different times and get humiliated without any evidence that there was voter fraud. So she's whining about the election like Trump did, but she's not lying about the election like Trump did. There's a giant, giant difference.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, we really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.